Good morning, everybody. My name is Muchana Saharia, and aji ami eta notun topic loi ahiso apnalokor agot Representation of People's Act and Democratic Polity in Contemporary India. So basically ami first of all of man Representation of People Act, which is made by the Parliament of India, for the synchronous conduct of elections in India. Hoy ne 5 বছৰ মুৰে মুৰে যোনটো আমাৰ লোকসভা ইলেকশনস হয় বা আমাৰ যোনটো স্টেট লেভেল ইলেকশনস হয় হেতু কোনে কন্ডাক্ট কোনটো লেজিসলেশনে কন্ডাক্ট কৰা হেল্প কৰে ৰিপ্ৰেজেন্টেশন অফ পিপলস এক্ট আৰু ডেমোক্ৰেটিক পলিটি ইন কন্টেম্পৰেৰী ইণ্ডিয়া এই টপিকটোৱে বুজাই কি এই লেজিসলেশন টুৰ পৰা আমাৰ কি কন্ডাক্ট অফ ইলেকশনসত হেল্প হৈ আছে বা কি আমাৰ ইতিয়া কন্টেম্পৰেৰী টাইমছত কি নেগেটিভস আছে আমাৰ ইলেক্টৰেল প্ৰসেসটোত বা পজিটিভ কি হৈ আছে এই লেজিসলেশনটোৰ কাৰণে হেখিনি আমি আজি অলপমান সমুকৈ চাম we will begin with this topic dominantly and then we will move to the second part of the topic. Okay, fine. তো আমি আজি টপিকটো স্টার্ট কৰাৰ আগত যেহেতু আমি এই স্লাইডখনত কৈছো কি আমি ডেমোক্ৰেটিক পলিটিৰ কথা ডিসকাস কৰিম তো এই ডেমোক্ৰেটিক ওয়ার্ডটোৱে কি বুজায় hetu ami olop manke sai loa bhal jate we will have a proper flow of the discussion that we are having today. Okay, to begin with I will like to say a little bit about the word democracy. Okay, to democracy word to ami kor pra paiso democracy word to basically eta Greek word hoy. Okay, aru hey word to duta horu beleg word or pra ahise to demos juntoe bujai people. Okay, aru Croatia juntoe bujai rule aru ei duita word mili roi pela junto democracia boli word ase he word to form hoisile to democracia is people and rule. So from here we come to know that it is the rule of the people. Okay, aru yar pisot eta back story ase junto mai short ke koi diu ki ei democracy concept to basically ami city states or pra pao. City states was during the times of Athens and Sparta. Athens boli ekhon Greece or jaga asile Athens and Sparta boli we get this concept from the times of Plato and Aristotle. A Plato aru Aristotle jitia ami philosophy part of pohu ba political science or pohu then we get to know about this concept ki democracy boli eta bostu soli asile titia which is called as the rule of the people. Okay, aru heitur prai ami ei democracy word to paisilo. Okay, so what did we learn ki city states a concept tur pra democracy ahisile aru ajikali ami hetu local self government by lok sabha elections e bilakot ami he democracy essence to dekha pau है ना fair and square. Okay, किंतु आमी जदि डिक्शनरी मीनिंग साबो जाओ democracy ने की मीन करे in literary terms democracy की मीन करे so I have written it down in very lucid way. Okay, democracy is defined as a form of government in which the supreme power is vested in the people and is exercised by them directly or indirectly. Okay, jodi etu moi bhangi loi pela bujabo jao so democracy is any form of government jot rule of the people by the people and for the people hoy aru keneke hoy directly or indirectly. A directly aru indirectly to enu ki bujai ase directly boli kobo gole eta yare example hobo ami jun bila gram sabha election pau amar gaon bilakot je gram sabha election thake hetu local self government hai na 73rd constitutional amendment or paisilo ami to hetu hol amar direct elections in India hai na aru indirect elections kun bilak hoy junto ami lok sabha elections pau that is a kind of indirect elections mane on a pan India level or Rajya Sabha elections dominantly indirectly elected hai na to directly indirectly elected kintu but those are elected by the people hai na for the people and of the people. So that is the essence of democracy ki manu hai nijor representative bilakok elect koribo lagibo aru hihotor local standby thakibo ki mane moi ejon manuhor mane I am a people's man kind of one person will be elected from one constituency, isn't it? So this is the representative of the whole constituency. Fine. very quickly we'll go to the next slide. Okay, jihetu ami democracy ki hoy pohiye aso. Okay, we learned about what is democracy, korpra ahise democracy word to, and we learned ki tar essence to kunkhini pra ahisile he na. So very quickly we'll look ki amar preamble junto democratic boli word ase, he word tur initials ki hoy, he word to Indian context ot ki bujai ami etu jani thwa bahute important hoy. Okay, so our Indian context or democratic bully college junto our preamble is the ID card of our constitution na our constitutional forefathers bilake etuk amar junto preamble hoy hetu amak ID card of the constitution buli koise he na to tate junto democratic word ase amar karne hetue eta dictum hobo lage. Okay, so democracy from the constitutional point of view, a form of government where people enjoy equal political rights. Okay, enekwa nohoy ki ejon manhu jodi kunba majority caste or pra ahise, kunba majority religion or pra ahise, to teo kiba veto vote dia hobo. No, that does not happen. One person has the right to one vote, hai na, irrespective of where they are coming from and how they are coming from. Okay, and second is elect their rulers. Okay, they have equal vote and they have the right to elect their rulers. Fine, etu to ami dekhi ahisu ki eta constituency pra ejon manhu elect hoy ne, so they have right to elect this person, hai na. This is what is said in here. Okay, and you can hold them accountable. Definitely jodi yate m number of people have voted for this person and this person is victorious, so definitely this person is accountable. No, this is how democracy works, hai na. I said initially na ki democracy is of the people, for the people and by the people, to a manu jon to definitely accountable hobo lagibo. Fair and square, isn't it? Okay, so now we have talked about ki democracy word to corpora ahise, tar meaning ki hoy aru preamble ki meaning ase amar. So next thing we will very quickly go ki democratic polity in contemporary times boli je ami initially topic to start korisilu. Okay, to hetur bikhoy ami okoman ke jani thau so that we can learn about this in context of the Representation of People's Act, and then it will be easy for us to understand from the mains perspective. Okay, so the first point here I have added is that holding of free and fair elections is sine qua non of democracy. Okay, free and fair elections. Okay, free and fair elections se ki bujai? There was a case around in 2019 Vellore constituency at a reaching or case hosile juntur karne Vellore constituency juntu election hoy to hetu reach kora boli koi hetu null and void kori dia hoisile, isn't it? This was a very prominent thing that had happened in Vellore. So a constituency to juntu issue hoisile heitue ami eta non fair or non free method of election boli kobo paru hoy ne, ei bostu tui jate nohoy. Okay, aru ami sob manhu bilake nijor ruler jonok eta convenient process ot ba eta free weight kunu bhoy bhab nohua ke ba karu kotha ami jodi kabak vote di diu to kunu bai amak onisto koribo niki, hei kotha to nabhaba ke jitia ami vote dibo paru aru amar elected representatives jonok select koribo paru, then it is a free and fair method of election, isn't it? Aru sine qua non of democracy boli kyo kowa hoise, jodi he ami nijor representative jonok free and fair method ot amar expression of vote to eta mane bhoy bhab nohuake jodi express koribo paru titia he ami democracy to sustain koribo parim, hoy ne nohoy? Nohole jodi amak hokoluke suppose 500 taka dia hoise election rakon, okay, which we call freebies dia hoy, aru amak jodi manipulate kora hoy ki ami ejon manhuke vote koribo lagibo to titia to election procedure to reach hoy jabo no, to hei bostu to nohok hei karne we should hold free and fair elections. Fair enough. Okay, now let's go to the second point. To ensure the conduct of elections in free, fair and an impartial manner, the constitution makers incorporated part 15, article 324 to 329 in the constitution and empowered parliament to make laws to regulate the electoral process. Okay, ei bostu tue olopman moi bhangi easy ke jodi bujabo jao etu meaning korise ki ami je yate free and fair election ar kotha kolo ki karu bhoy bhab nohua ke ami nijor vote to express koribo paru hetui jate ami koribo paru eta impartial manner. Okay, yate je moi koisu impartial manner jate ami express koribo paru hetur karne eta constitution eta article ase kisuman, he article khini kun khini part ot ase, part 15 है ना ইয়াতে মই মেনশন কৰি দিছো পাৰ্ট 15 আৰু ডমিনেন্টলি আৰ্টিকল 324 to 329 fair okay আৰু এই পইণ্টত লাষ্টৰ ফালে মই এটা বহুত ইম্পৰ্টেন্ট বস্তু ইয়াতে মেনশন কৰিছো কি যদিও ইয়াতে মেনশন কৰা আছে আৰ্টিকল 324 ৰ পৰা 329 বুলি ঠিক আছে কিন্তু লাষ্টত মই কৈছো that Parliament of India has the power to make laws to regulate the electoral process okay মানে এটো বুজাইছে কি আৰ্টিকল বিলাকত যোনখিনি বস্তু লিখা আছে হেখিনি মানে সাবস্টেন্টিভ নহয় ঠিক আছে আৰু তাতে আৰু কিছুমান নীতি নিয়মৰ প্ৰয়োজন আছে আৰু সেই নীতি নিয়মখিনি কোনে বনাব আমাৰ লেজিসলেটিভ বডিটো আৰু আমাৰ লেজিসলেটিভ বডি কোনটো হয় পাৰ্লিমেন্ট অফ ইন্ডিয়া হেনা তো এইটোই ইন্ডিকেশন দিছে যাতে আমি ৰিপ্ৰেজেন্টেশন অফ পিপলস এক্ট 1950 আৰু 1951 বুলি দুটা লেজিসলেশন আনিব পাৰো যাতে আমি কন্ডাক্ট অফ ইলেকশনস তো এটা free and fair method বা এটা continuous spontaneous method আমি কৰিব পাৰো হেনা fine this is done তো third point আমি কি কৈছো the election commission of India is the watchdog of free and fair elections in the country and article 324 of the constitution provides for its establishment fine election commission of India can also be called as the harbinger of the sustenance of democratic polity in India है ना harbinger of democratic polity in India aru hey election commission of India article to ki hoy 324 this is a very important article with respect to electoral processes in India and this is advisable that this should be remembered so eneko article bilak jetia apuni nijor mains or answer likhe then your answer becomes very lucid and very extensive and there are high probability that the invigilator who's checking the copy will like seeing these articles on your copy and he will be satisfied that you know in a lucid manner ki election or procedure free and fair election article to 324 okay fair now let's go to the next slide okay so here as we have talked about democratic polity kun kita article or pa hai so now we need to answer this question ki how does it and how do the whole procedure ensure that the whole process remains democratic है ना आमी democracy तो कहने के आनिलो आमी हेतु discuss करिलो free and fair elections और है ना और free and fair elections और article असले 324 we learned about it है ना which is the election commission of India article which is called as the harbinger of the sustenance of democratic polity in India right of course so how do we ensure it okay so we can ensure it through many articles in the constitution and through many methodologies also which we will read in the later part of the slide but initially let us look at 2-3 provisions of the constitution a constitution at no quote ase ki ami democratic polity to keneke ensure korim okay so at a universal adult suffrage after independence there was a need to hold general elections to elect a truly representative government on the basis of universal adult suffrage okay fine so what do you mean by universal adult suffrage so universal adult suffrage is nothing but any person who is above the age of 18 in India and has a registration with election commission of India and has a voter card can express his right to opinion with regard to elections right to opinion or you can call it expression of opinion with regard to election है ना so universal adult suffrage किতিয়া হয় any person who is above the age of 18 plus মানে ইয়াতে এনেকুৱা কোনো হেৰি নাই কি অকল মেনেই পাৰিব ভোট কৰিব বা অকল womenই পাৰিব ভোট কৰিব বা one section of people will only be able to vote তেনেকুৱা কোনো বাউন্ডেজ নাই সেই কাৰণে আমি universal বুলি কম ফাইন আৰু এই universal adult suffrage যোনটো আমি ইতিয়া 18 years বুলি ধৰো 18 years or above সবে ভোট কৰিব পাৰে who has a registration with election commission of India that was not always the scenario okay it age to agote 21 years asile fine but the 61st constitutional amendment which was approximately in the year 1989 hai na a 61st constitutional amendment to a age to decrease kori 18 years korile but initially it was what was the age 21 years Okay, so fine. We understood what is universal adult suffrage with respect to the electoral process in India. Okay, now let us go to the next point. Okay, so here we are talking ki universal adult suffrage to je ami bujilu ki universal adult suffrage to kinu hoy bostu to ami universally kyo kom bostu to thik ase hetu amar constitution kuntu article ot ase it is in article 325 hai na ensures universal adult suffrage and provides that no person can be ineligible for inclusion or to claim to be included in a special electoral roll on the grounds of religion, race, caste or sex. है ना? Fine. So etu jodi moi bhangi loi bole bujabo jao easy words etu bujaise je ami to universal adult suffrage to discuss korilu ki hokolure vote kora right thakibo 18 plus hole hoy na to ei article 325 to koy ki universal adult suffrage to ami hold koribo lage aru duta bostu koy ki eneko ji kunu manhu ei sarita basis on religion race ba caste ba sex ei sarita basis on ei yate or a second to okay yate end nine it's a or okay to etwe bujaise ki any one of them or basis to ami discrimination koribo nwaru aru hei manu janam kuno veto power nisna vote dibo nwaru okay to ei sarita race kuno specific religion ba kuno specific race ba caste ba sex ot belong korar karone kuno manuhor obligatory kuno negative hobo na lagibo ba kuno positive hobo na lagibo okay fine now let's move to the next line okay so ami eta loke pohilu ki democracy word to ki meaning hoy ne etu eta greek word hoy ami hetu bujilu prothamate tar pisot ami bujilu ki democratic polity ki bujai hoy ne tar pisot ami salu ki constitution or duta article salu 324 or 325 hai na ami eta very quickly will go through ki features of democracy ki hoy as we are already talking about democracy hai na to we'll quickly see ki features of democracy ki hoy okay based on fair elections fine ami to free and fair election article tor kotha patilui है ना free and fair election article tor kotha this free and fair election 324 a bostu to we can very conveniently use in the introduction part of our mains answer and it will give a very good look to your answers okay to begin with the person who's checking the copy will understand that you know about this article hai na and it's a very nice way to start the answer okay second is based on universal adult franchise so we talked about article 325 isn't it universal adult franchise so 18 plus anybody can vote who has a voter card fine fair and square okay the third point is decision making power must be with those elected by the people hai na democracy is by the people of the people and for the people hai na to enekwa ji kunu manu who is elected by people that person has the locus standi hoy na hoy that I have been elected by a group of people from I have been selected from a elected from a constituency hai na so this person has the right to make laws on the ei manu bilakor karone law bonwar teor অধিকাৰ আছে but তেওঁৰ responsibility হয় এটো হয় নে so this is what is very conveniently said in this statement ki decision making powers okay must be with those elected by the people definitely ejon jitia ejon manuhor protinidhi hisabe teok select kora hoise to definitely teor etu mane etu responsibility hoy no ki teo ei manu bilakor karone eta law banaok ba decision making korok hoy ne no hoy yes so this is explained in this point and the fourth point is government rules within limits set by the constitutional law and citizen rights fair to amar jonto government of the day hoy he government of the day should take care of some basic limitations that has been put on the government hai na suppose when we talk about the basic structure of the constitution hai na basic structure boli ami jonto paisilo keshav nand bharti case on তো এটো এটা তো লিমিটেশন হয় ন অন দ্য কনস্টিটিউশনাল লেজিসলেটিভ পাৱাৰ্স অফ দ্য পাৰ্লিয়ামেন্ট है ना कि এটো ইহতে এটোৰ যোনটো রুডিমেন্টারি ভ্যালু হয় এটো চেঞ্জ কৰিব নোৱাৰে so this is what is said the government rules within limits set by the constitutional law and citizen rights fine citizen বিলাকৰো right to life আছে है ना right to life আছে right to privacy আছে है ना so এই বিলাক অলপমান মনত ৰাখি right to life right to privacy এই বিলাক অলপমান মনত ৰাখি laws বিলাক বনোৱা to obligatory হয় তো এই পইণ্টে হেতুৱে বুজাইছে so very quickly we talked about fair elections হয় based on universal adult franchise হয় decision making power to junjan representative হয় তেওঁৰ ওপৰত আছে হয় নে আৰু গভৰ্নমেন্ট তো এটা সেট লিমিটৰ আন্ডাৰত কাম কৰে না okay fine so as we have talked about the whole story behind ki democracy to keneke ahile hoy ne and how it initially formed into democratic polity our Indian context no key value ase we looked through two articles hai na universal adult franchise we talked about the article of free and fair elections hai na so now we will get the main topic of the day hai na we started with so we basically started with the Representation of Peoples Act 1950 legislation so let us talk in a very lucid way on this article 9 on this legislation 1950 first we will talk about the 1950 then we will see ki 1950 aru 1951 juntu legislation ase hihon duzar mazot ki difference ase hetu ami somukoi bujibole chesta korim jate jodi mains ot jodi question ahe ki ei duitar bhitorot ki difference ase we will very quickly able to write 4-5 points as a difference okay so yeah so Representation of Peoples Act 1950 lays down procedures for delimitation of constituencies okay fine provides for the allocation of seats in the House of the People and in the legislative assemblies and legislative council of states fine in the House of the People legislative assemblies and legislative councils okay lays procedure for the preparation of electoral rolls and the manner of filling seats okay preparation of electoral rolls fine and lays down the qualification of voters fine so delimitation to ki hoy delimitation of constituencies mean very in a very short way I will say ki suppose a constituency this is a constituency in India okay suppose aru this is a state in India fine okay so yate apunar n number of population ase okay so a n number of population to ami to hihotor voting or basis ot mane ami jeneke amar heri ami amar ghorar sobotke usorar voting center to ami vote koru hoy na noy so we vote at the nearest voting center near to our house to keep in respect ki ami jate a n tur pra a n dot goi vote dibo laga nohoy so heitur karone kisuman constituency eneke distribute kori dia hoy thik ase constituency is nothing but eta area demarcate kori dia hoy okay to ei protecto constituency junto demarcate kora hoy to eitu khayal rakha hoy ki protecto constituency suppose yate n number of people ase yateo n thake jate okay aru yatu jate n thake aru yatu jate n thake okay jate protecto constituency almost even number of population heri kora hoy mane maintain kora hoy hetur karone we ensure ki ei delimitation process to eta mane survey basis ot hobo lage population kiman ase jodi suppose ei gute state khonan 1000 population ase hai na to 1000 population to ami je yate eta duta tinta sarita pasta okay 6ta 7ta 8ta 9ta 10ta 11 12ta to ei to ami 12 এদি ডিভাইড কৰি প্রত্যেকটো কনস্টিটুয়েন্সি সাপোজ x নাম্বার অফ পিপল হল হয় না তো x নাম্বার অফ পিপল তো প্রত্যেকটো কনস্টিটুয়েন্সিত থাকিব মানে ইয়াটো x থাকিব লাগিব আপোনাৰ ইয়াটো x থাকিব লাগিব ইয়াটো x থাকিব লাগিব এনেকুৱা হ'ব না লাগে কি ইয়াতে বলে আমি অকল 15টা মানুহ ৰাখিছো আৰু ইয়াতে বলে 250টা মানুহ আছে তো এটু কৰিলে তো নহব ন মানে এটু কৰিলে এনেকুৱা হৈ যাব কি 15 জন মানুহে এজন মানুহক ভোট কৰি উলাইছে আৰু 250 জন মানুহে এজন মানুহক ভোট কৰি উলাইছে তো এইটো প্ৰপৰশনাল এজন মানুহে মানে 250 জনক ৰিপ্ৰেজেন্ট কৰি আছে আৰু ইয়াতে এজন মানুহে 15 জনক ৰিপ্ৰেজেন্ট কৰি আছে তো তেতিয়া প্ৰপৰশনালিটিৰ ব্যালেন্স টু ডিসব্যালেন্স হৈ যায় ন তো সেই কাৰণে আমি এই ডিলিমিটেশন প্ৰসেসটো পপুলেশনৰ সাৰ্ভেৰ মতে কৰো আৰু এটা পপুলেশনৰ পার্সপেক্টিভৰ পৰা এটা মানে কমন স্ট্যান্ডার্ড মেইনটেইন কৰিব চেষ্টা কৰো কি প্ৰত্যেকটো কনস্টিটুয়েন্সি যাতে সেম নাম্বার অফ পপুলেশন থাকে Okay, our second point ami ki koisilo provides for the allocation of seats in the House of the People, Legislative Assembly or Legislative Council of the States. Fine, this is easy to understand. Allocation of seats mane kunkhon mane lok sabhar je ami je beleg beleg constituency hoy thik ase to kunkhon constituency kiman dangor hobo code kunkhon state ot kiman ta seat poribo heitu a representation of people's act 1958 mane guide kore. Okay, the third point we look ki lays procedure for the preparation of electoral rolls. Fine, electoral rolls mane kune kune vote koribo eta area thik ase heitu prepare hoy a representation of people's act 1950 under on. Fine, aru lays down the qualification of voters. Fine, আপুনি আৰু মই যে ভোট দিব পাৰো বা কোনোবাই যে ভোট দিব পাৰে 18 প্লাস হোৱা মানুহ বিলাকে তো সেই কোৱালিফিকেশন কি লাগিব ভোট দিবৰ কাৰণে এজন citizen hobo lagibo hoy ne ba ekhon state ot belong koribo lagibo ne 18 plus hobo lagibo heikhini bostu je ki qualification ase voters or heikhini bostu representation of people's act 1950 likha ase. Fine, to ei sarita point ami bahut somu koi discuss korilo ei sarita point ami olopman detail ot sai jao etia jate jodi exam ot ahe we will be very quickly able to write 2-3 points under all of the 4 points. Okay, fine. So delimitation of constituency. Okay, so delimitation of constituency karone ekhon moi diagram add kori disu jate olopman agote je moi ei bostutu bujaisilo এই যে বস্তুটো বুজাইছিল কি প্ৰত্যেকখন কনস্টিটুৱেন্সি এটা প্ৰপৰশনাল নাম্বাৰ অফ পপুলেশন আমাক লাগে হয় না হেইটো মেইনটেইন কৰাটোৱে আমি এই ডায়াগ্ৰামখনত দেখা পাও you can easily see that here this area is a very big area है ना this area is also a very big area but this does not mean ki eta population বেছি আছে okay ইমানখিনি এৰিয়া লোৱাৰ কাৰণেহে মানে হিহতি এটা প্ৰপৰশন মেইনটেইন কৰিব বিচাৰি পাৰিছে মানে এই এৰিয়াটো n হ'ব এই এৰিয়াটো n নাম্বাৰ অফ পিপলই হ'ব বা এই সৰু এৰিয়াটোৰ পৰাও n নাম্বাৰ অফ পিপলই ভোট কৰিব বুজি পাইছে তো প্ৰপৰশন টু দা পপুলেশন প্ৰত্যেকটো কনস্টিটুৱেন্সিৰ পৰা এটা সিমিলাৰ নাম্বাৰ অফ পপুলেশন আমি হোল্ড কৰিম জুনে এজন মানুহক সবে মিলি লৈ পেলা ডিসিশন মেকিং কৰিলে এজন মানুহক হিহতে ভোট কৰি জিকাব আৰু ইয়াৰ পৰাও এজন মানুহ ওলাব হয় না ইয়াৰ পৰাও এজন মানুহ ওলাব ইয়াৰ পৰাও এজন মানুহ ওলাব হয় না আৰু এই বিলাকে সবে মিলি লৈ পেলা আমাৰ লোক সভাত গৈ আমাৰ কাৰণে ডিসিশন মেকিং কৰিব হয় না ফেয়াৰ এণ্ড স্কয়াৰ ওকে Okay, so delimitation of constituencies to ami olopman salo tar pisot delimitation of constituency to kune kore okay the president of India has been conferred the power to amend orders delimiting constituencies only after consulting the Election Commission of India okay to president of India power ase কি এই ডিলিমিটেশন প্রসেস তো আগলৈ লৈ যায় হয় না তো কিন্তু তেও কি কৰিব লাগিব তেও কিন্তু নিজৰ মতে নিজে জেনেকে ভাল লেখে তেনেকে জানে তেও কৰিব পাৰিব তেনেকে তেও নোৱাৰিব কৰিব তো তেও কাৰ লগত কনসাল্ট কৰিব লাগে ইলেকশন কমিশন অফ ইন্ডিয়াৰ লগত ওকে আৰু এটো এটা বাইলেটাৰাল ডিসকাশনৰ থ্ৰু দি হয় এটা কনসালটেশন প্ৰসেসৰ থ্ৰু দি হয় হেনা তো এই যে কনসালটেশন প্ৰসেসটো এটোই ইটসেলফ নুবুজাই জানো কি উই আর ফলোইং আ ডেমোক্ৰেটিক মেথডোলজি है ना जोटी এটা আরবিট্রারি ওয়েট অকল প্রেসিডেন্টে বহি লৈ পেলা নিজৰ ডিসক্রিপশনৰ মতে কৰি দিলে হেতেন কি দি আমি ডিলিমিটেশনটো এনেকেহে কৰিম আমি কিন্তু এনেকেহে কৰিম ডিলিমিটেশনটো আমি খালি এই ষ্টেটখনৰ 6টা কনস্টিটুৱেন্সি ৰাখিম তো তিতিয়াটো এটো আরবিট্রারি হৈ যাব ন মানে this will not be following the democratic mandate of our country है ना যোনটো আমি rule of the people by the people and for the people ami discuss kori aso to heitu ensure koribor karone eta consultation process with Election Commission of India to mandate kori dia hoise okay in Lok Sabha there is a reservation of seats for scheduled caste and scheduled tribes fine ei scheduled caste or scheduled tribes or jonto reservation ase we have this has come from the Pune Pact isn't it Pune Pact that was done between whom the father of our nation and B.R. Ambedkar sir है ना this happened around 1932 yeah isn't it okay fine the Election Commission of India has the so we are clear with this point that the scheduled tribes are scheduled caste or karne ami demarcation koro Lok Sabha elections so the Election Commission of India has power to determine the constituencies to be reserved for scheduled tribes in the states of Meghalaya Mizoram Nagaland and Tripura Okay, so this 4 states we should very mandatorily remember because this is a very important point. Okay, ki Election Commission of India schedule tribes or kun kita state or pare Meghalaya, Mizoram, Nagaland and Tripura. You can use a mnemonic for it: Meghalaya, Mizoram, Nagaland and Tripura. You can either use MNMT, okay, which I also use, okay, or you can make your own mnemonic to remember the 4 states. Fine. Okay, so let's move to the next slide. We discussed this ki constituency process to keneke delimit hoy hai na, aru constituency delimit korat kar power ase, president or power ase, kar consultation koribo lage, Election Commission of India hai na. Okay, so ami je yate slide khon paisilo, we discussed this slide no ki allocation of seats. A allocation of seats tor bikhoye ami olopman sai long. Ami gradually gute gita pointer bikhoye gradually some preparation of electoral rules, qualification of voters. Now let's move to the second point here. Okay, allocation of seats. Fine. Okay, so allocation of seats in the House of the People and the legislative assemblies and legislative council of the states. Fine. So yate ki koa hoise prothomote ki article 81 and article 170 of the Constitution of India lay down the maximum number of seats in the parliament and in legislative assemblies of states, and also certain principles to be followed in allocating seats. Certain principles boli koise ha, certain principles that has to be followed in allocating seats in the House of People. House of People mane apunar ki hoy, Lok Sabha. We're talking about Lok Sabha here, among the states and in the state legislative assemblies. Etu to state or kothai discuss kori ase. But what is left? Okay, what is left is the actual allocation of such seats to be provided by the law. Okay, eto ei bosturuke jodi moi easy bhakhat bhangi loi bla kobo jao to article 81 aru article 170 of our constitution, what does it say? Ki ami Lok Sabha ba jonto state legislative body elections hoy tate maximum number of seats in the parliament, okay, and state legislative assemblies kiman hobo pare, mane maximum 400 hobo pare ne 500 hobo pare, hetu kuntu article e koi, Lok Sabhar karne article 81 aru state legislative assemblies or karne article 170. Okay, so two very dominant articles we need to remember, article 81 and article 170. Article 81 to kihar karne Lok Sabha aru article 172 amar state legislative assemblies. Fair. Okay, aru ki bujai ki maximum number of people kiman hobo paribo hoy ne, aru second bostu to ki koy ki certain principles to be followed. Seats bilak je allocate koru ami state level elections on aru je Lok Sabha elections on hetu ki principle follow hoy, mane etu niti niyamor mote hobo ne etu niti niyamor mote hobo, heitu no allocation of seats to no keneke hoy ase, mane okhomot je 126 tai seat thakibo ba 127 tai seat thakibo, thik ase, heitu keneke hoy heitu demarcate kore 170 number article হয় না, আৰু লোক সভা ইলেকশনছত কিমানটা সিট থাকিব হেতু ডিমার্কেট কৰে 81 নাম্বাৰ। ওকে ফাইন, কিন্তু কি ডিমার্কেট নকৰে এই দুটা আৰ্টিকলে, এই দুটা আৰ্টিকলে একচুয়াল যোনটো এলোকেশন অফ সিটস অন দা গ্ৰাউন্ড যোনটো হয় না, মানে যোনটো মেথডোলজি আমি ইউজ কৰো সেইটো ডিমার্কেট নকৰে, আৰু সেইটো যে ডিমার্কেট নকৰে তো সেইটো ডিমার্কেট কোনে কৰিবৰ কাৰণে এৰি দিছে, সেইটো ডিমার্কেট কৰিব এৰি দিছে ল মেকিং বডি হেৰি বডিটোৰ কাৰণে, আৰু ল মেকিং বডি কি হয়, the legislature of our country, hai na? And who is the legislature of our country? The parliament, hai na? So the parliament has the power to make law with regard to the actual allocation of seats. Aru hihoti ki law banale? Definitely Representation of People's Act 1950 and 1951, hai na? Isn't it? Yes. Okay. Okay, so the similarly we will also talk about article 171 junto amar constitution at ase 81 aru 170 kotha discuss korilo, 171 ot ki hoy ki same kotha to junto ami eikhini bostu discuss korilo hekhini ami maximum and minimum number of seats in the legislative council of a state, meaning the upper house of a state. Okay, not every state has this legislative council, kintu jun bilak state ot ase sokhon hatkhon ji ki state ot ase to hihotor কেনে হিহতৰ মানে ম্যাক্সিমাম নাম্বাৰ অফ পিপল কিমান হ'ব আপাৰ হাউসটোত বা মিনিমাম নাম্বাৰ অফ কিমান হ'ব হেতু কোনটো আৰ্টিকলে ডিমার্কেট কৰে, আৰ্টিকল 171. সো আমি তিনটা আৰ্টিকলৰ কথা শিকিলো এতিয়া হয় নে, আৰ্টিকল 81, আৰ্টিকল 170 আৰু আৰ্টিকল 171. ওকে, দিস থ্ৰী আৰ্টিকলস we have to remember. আৰু আগতে আমি দুটা আৰ্টিকল পাই আহিছো, কি আৰ্টিকল পাইছো, 324 है ना আৰু 325 है ना, Fine. So we have learned about 5 articles till now. Okay. Fine. So agor slide khona juntu bostu moi discuss korijilu, the Representation of People's Act was enacted to provide for the allocation of seats in the House of the People and in the legislative assemblies and legislative council. Fine. Moi je koisilu ki a power to a is a law making or power to the kak die legislator of die parliament or ase thik ase ei bostu to yate koi dia hoise hoy ne ki hei karni to ami Representation of People's Act banaisu hai na. Fine. Okay, so allocation of seats, as far as possible every state gets representation in the Lok Sabha in proportion to their population. Fine. So a proportion to the population buli je koi, a proportion to the population ami a diagram to thika nasilu jano etu to amar proportion to the population e hoy ase ki a area to rao n number of voters ase ya to n number ase ya to n number ase hoy ne a area to jodiu dangor hoy tothapi ya to n number ase to a n number sobote to same ase jodi yate 10 ta ase ya to 10 ta ase ya to 10 ta ase ya to 10 ta ase to ইয়াৰ পৰাও এজনে মানুহ ওলাই আছে হয়নে তো isn't it proportion and isn't it proportion to the population হয়না so this thing is only being discussed here ki proportion to the population মানে আমি যে এই ডায়াগ্রাম তো চালু কি কনস্টিটুয়েন্সি বিলা কেনেকে ডিস্ট্রিবিউট হৈ আছে that is very fair and square well written in this point. Okay, now let's move to the next point of our Representation of People's Act, which junto ami discuss korisilo lays procedure for the preparation of electoral rolls and the manner of filling seats. Okay, electoral rolls to prepare kora mane kune vote dibo eta area ba ki kun dina vote dibo procedure to ki hobo hei bostu to kuntu actor pra pam ami Representation of People's Act hai na ami arambhonite Representation of People's Act or 4ta point discuss korisilo so this is the third point that we discussed. Okay, so yeah, so yate nu ki koa hoise ami olop sai lo the 1950 Act permits the registration of persons in electoral rolls who are ordinarily resident in a constituency, okay, or are service voters. Okay, there are commonly 2 types of voters. One is ordinary voters, jun ordinary resident hoy eta area. Okay, and second type is the service voters. Okay, jun nijor service commitments or karne ba nijor job profile or karne ya to foreign destinations bilakot kitiaba pothai dia hoy. Okay, or maybe they are at our borders BSF or heri hoy BSF or constable hoy sub inspector hoy something like that to eneko service commitments or kane jun bilak manhu nijor jot mane jot hihotor permanent residing citizen hoy tate jun bilak manhu vote dibo nware hihotok service voters boli koa hoy aru june nijor permanent residence ate vote dibo pare they are ordinarily called ordinary resident in a constituency. Okay, so okay fine. So 1950 Act pe ordinary residents or karneo kotha koy aro a service voters hokolor karneo koy to ei service voters boli je ami bostu to discuss korilu so he tate kun include hoy armed forces personnel of the armed forces hai na ami BSF for example to salu member of the armed police force of a state, okay, serving outside the state or central government employees posted outside India, okay, Indian foreign service employees hai na they are posted outside India no in different countries, so this kind of people can be called as service voters. So hihotor karne ki procedure ase hihote to eta vote dibor karne they are not expected to fly all the way from a different country and vote na or they are not expected to travel all the way from the borders and come and vote. Okay, so hihotor karne teneko manu bilakor karne alop convenient kori dia hoise way to and we have basically 2 methodologies. One is postal ballot voting boli ko. Okay, and the second is proxy voting. Proxy voting is basically you have a proxy who votes on your name and postal ballot voting is basically apuna vote to you seal it in a postal ballot and you send it. Okay, so these 2 methodologies we can use for service voters. Our ordinary resident bilake to nije goi polling booth vote kore hai na. Okay, so certain offices in India declared by the president. Okay, so certain offices president e kisuman mane president the president of India hai na the president of India can also demarcate some offices under the name of service voters or service voters basically. Okay, so teu likheu service voter or a opportunity to lobo pare. Fine, or a opportunity to service voting or opportunity to aru kisuman manhuhe lobo pare jun bilak hoy the wives of such persons who are attached to those service voters hai na hihotor logote jun bilak mane their better half stay mane basically the female gender we are talking about and this basically the female gender that we are talking about that is a topic of very huge debate in recent times ki ei bostu tunu gender neutral kyo nohoy if a female is posted outside and her spouse is like staying with that female hai na so that also person should be allowed to have this right okay isn't it so but that is not the scenario itialoke bostu to gender neutral hua nai so people on a lots of PILs have been filed with regard to this ki a wife term to at a gender neutral connotation dibo lage and in place of this wife spouse word should be used so that it is like on a equal platform hai na and then only we can ensure ki the democracy is equal for all democracy to basic meaning to etwe hoy na that it's equal for all everybody has a equal right to vote kintu yate to equal right to vote ensure hua nai because we are only giving the advantage to the wives hai na the husbands are not even getting the advantage fine okay so we discussed this okay the last point that we discussed in 1950s act was the fourth point hai na this is the fourth point that we discussed in our 1950s act so it was a preparation of electoral rolls acha electoral rolls bilak eta constituency hok ba eta state ot keneke kun administrative body thake who are the officers who are mane allocated to do various kinds of jobs in a electoral time being hai na to heitut kun manhu what are the designations that we allot are mentioned very crisp format we have mentioned I have added a diagram also with it first let us go through the designations that we have the chief electoral officer okay each state has a chief electoral officer nominated or designated by the Election Commission of India in consultation with the state government okay so Election Commission of India state government or consultation loi ejon chief electoral officer nominate kore june state or gute election procedure to supervise kore okay fine so ei je Election Commission of India state body state of je consult kori lepla chief electoral officer jon nominate korar help kore okay so isn't this process also replicating that it was a democratic process follow kori ase Election Commission of India is not arbitrarily doing it na they are taking consultation from the state ki apunaloke kunjon manhuak chief electoral officer hoa to bisare eta opinion loy hai na aru he consultation to basis ot kore aru as a chief election officer nominate kore hai na to hey process to democratic hoy na and what they are trying to do have a democratic polity in India fine okay so a chief electoral officer jonar under on as a district election officer thake fine the hierarchy will be chief electoral officer under prottekhon district as a district election officer thake fine jodi apunar state on 10 khon district ase to 10 jon district election officer thakibo jodi apunar state or 33 khon state district ase to 33 jon thakibo fine okay so the next dignitary is electoral registration officer the electoral registration officer is responsible for the preparation of the electoral roll fine electoral roll a constituency tun a 100 জন মানুহে যে ভোট কৰিব পাৰিব সেই ৰোলখন কোনে বনায় আমাৰ electoral registration officer okay fine the returning officer the next designation is the returning officer fine so returning officer jonor ki kaam hoy he is responsible for the conduct of the election okay the returning officer junto ami a designation to use koro to teor main responsibility to ki hoy that person has to return with the elected candidate okay and he is responsible for the on ground conduct of the elections of the whole election time being okay fine here I have mentioned it and he returns and elected candidate okay fine so yes ami Election Commission of India hierarchy goes like it so this is the most powerful and then hierarchy goes down hai na ami chief electoral officer er kotha discuss korilu chief electoral officer to Election Commission of India nominate kore hai na kar logot mili nominate kore state body logot okay aru ei manhujon state or almost head nisna hoy state or gute conduct of elections to sai aru district election officer jimanta district thakibo himanjon district election officer thakibo aru teor tolot ki thake electoral registration officer jone electoral roll banai কি এখন কনস্টিটুৱেন্সিত কোনে ভোট কৰিব কেনেকে কোনে ভোট কৰিব হেনা আৰু তাৰ তলত আমাৰ বুথ লেভেল অফিচাৰ থাকে তো বুথ লেভেল অফিচাৰ উই স দিস ৰিটাৰ্নিং অফিচাৰ বা পোলিং অফিচাৰো থাকে ওকে fine so now we are done with the 1950s act of representation of people's act right now let us quickly go through our second legislation that is the 1951 act fine so yeah so I have added this diagram for a quick snap review ki part ase you don't have to remember all the parts in it the parts which you have to remember I have added in this slide okay majorly jeti apnalokor mains ot ahibo question to 4-5 points you should remember and I have very crisply added and summarized them okay so that you can write a 15 marker answer with almost 5 points for this the 1950s act at pasta point likhile 1951 act at pasta point likhile okay and the significance and all if you add you can very conveniently write the 3-page answer hai na so let's quickly go through it okay it regulates the actual conduct of elections okay actual conduct of elections boli koise ha 1950s or junto act asile eta jodi overall ami sao to ei act to all of man general provisions bilak bujaisile হয় না but this act is saying ki actual conduct of elections keneke hoy mane basic specific bostu bilak bujaise to jodi apnalokor monot thake ki ei act to all basic specific hoy aru ei act to all of general hoy thik ase comparatively general hoy then only you will remember that you have to write specific details in this act of 1951 which was legislated just 1 year after the 1950s act okay the actual conduct of elections and by elections fine it provides administrative machinery for conducting elections okay 1950s act to ami ki paisilo ki jun bilang ami 1950s act to ei kijon manhor kotha poisilo hoy ne ki ei keta designation ase bole kintu ei keta designation or uporoto aru kisuman manhu laga hoy amak eta election conduct koribor karone keneko dhornor amak administrative machinery laga hoy we need police force hai na so ei khini extra jikhini periphery administrative machinery lage he khinir kotha e 1951 act ot basic lucid way discuss kora ase ki amak police laga hobo ane we need the healthcare department also okay in elections so he khini bostu এই 1951 act ot discuss kora ase kintu 1950 act ot ki hoisile we have only discussed about the electoral officer okay state district electoral election officer fine okay the third point is it deals with the registration of political parties fine registration of political parties means ki eta joti notun political party hoy suppose this political party is A to aji moi 10 ta manu mili pela eta political party khuli dilu fine ami 10 jon manu discuss korilu that we will make a political party okay kali goi loi pela moi ei 10 jon manu mili we cannot seek for votes first we will have to register ourselves with the election commission of India है ना only then we will eligible to perform as a political party okay aru a registration to je hoy a registration to a 1950s act or under ot hoy okay fine it's number 4th point is it specifies the qualification and disqualification for the membership of the house fine ami je amar je janotar protinidhi bilagok je ami nominate koro that this person is elect koro this person is elected from this constituency hai na so this person can be disqualified also hai na ki eo jodi etu suppose etu kaam kore thik ase to ei kita kaam korile teok disqualify kori dia hobo nijor seat tur pora lok sabha ba state legislative assembly to heitu kothai koa hoise ki disqualify korar ki kinu rules and regulations ase ki teok etu karone ami disqualify koribo parim ba ki kinu qualifications ase teok nu ki qualifications lagbo juntur basis ot teo amar mane representative hobo eligible hoy to hei kotha to discuss kore 1951 act fine okay so the fifth point is it provides for provision to curb corrupt practices and other offenses fine curb corrupt practices mane jodi ami je olo bagote discuss korilu ki eok disqualify keneke koribo para hobo suppose etu reason ot ami teok disqualify koribo parim to ei reason kitan thik ase this is a kind of corruption and breaching of trust of the people of India only na jodi amar representative bilake amar logote they are doing they are getting corrupted okay or they are getting criminalized hai a very popular term in today's political scenario that is criminalization of politics to teoloke jodi criminalization to they have got criminalized है ना तो they are adhering to corrupt practices and that is a dent on the exchequer of the public na ki amar taxation or paisa bile ki use kori hihote election khele aru hetute jodi hihote corruption kore to our public exchequer is only getting dented na to heitu jate nohoy ba corruption or ji kono method e jodi mane follow up koribo nware amar representative bilake to heitur obligations bilak ase representation of people act 1951 on fine okay and the last point is it lays down a procedure for the settling of doubts and disputes arising out of elections fine election of ji kono nohoy jodi horu hura ji kono e doubt hok mane age loi hok ba the sudden demise of a representative ba eta aspiring as a representative or demise hoy gol ba eta already elected representative or demise hoy gol to heikhini no keneke ami how will you solve those disputes to heikhini hoy amar representative of people's act 1951 or pra okay so very quickly we have discussed this 5-6 points okay fine so ami yate je discuss korilo actual conduct of elections tar bisor administrative machinery kotha registration of political parties or kotha qualification aru disqualification or kotha discuss korilo है ना तो এইখিনি বস্তুৱে আমি অলপমান ডিটেইলত চাই লওঁ যাতে আমাৰ কোনো ডাউট না থাকে কি এইটো বস্তুৱে কৰাপশন বুজায় বা এইটোৱে ডিসকোয়ালিফিকেশনৰ কাৰণ হ'ব পাৰে সেইখিনি আমি কুইকলি চাই লওঁ ওকে ফাইন Okay, qualification for contesting elections in India. আমি অলপ আগতে ডিসকাস কৰিলো কি qualifications আৰু disqualifications খিনি আমি চাব লাগিব হয়নে নহয় because this has been part of current affairs in our recent times criminalization of politics or jontu mare kotha koso criminalization of politics has been a very dominant topic in recent times newspaper almost every day we are getting to hear about this ki etu scam hoy goise hetu scam hoy goise hai na So, there is a very famous survey junpe koy ki 40% of our representatives in Lok Sabha have huge and have like not even miscellaneous crimes they have done like very pernicious or very dominant and very harmful crimes they are mane guilty for okay 40% are guilty of many very dominant heinous crimes that they have conducted fine so this is a very dominant case of criminalization of politics so ami disqualification criteria kita aru qualification criteria kita sabo lagibo ki election ki kinu qualification lage okay so the first has laid down the following qualifications fine a person must be an elector in the constituency isn't it ekhon constituency pora jodi apuni elect hobo bisare you have to be elected in that constituency fine okay the person must be a member of scheduled caste or scheduled tribe in any state if he wants to contest for a seat reserved for them fine jodi ekhon constituency pa suppose a constituency khon ST r karne ase aru ekhon ST r karne ase so you have to belong to this ST community to become an elected representative from this constituency okay and if you want to be a representative of this ST constituency you have to belong to this ST constituency and you have to have the documents of a ST you have to belong to some ST community of the state particularly okay or in national level or you have to belong to this ST community in that state or in national level in general hai na okay fine the third point is the minimum age for becoming a MLA or a MP okay MLA mane state legislative elections karne or MP mane Lok Sabha is 25 okay so 25 years ot ke dangor hole you will be able to become a representative of people from a particular constituency in state legislative assemblies or Lok Sabha elections hai na aru panchayatot kintu olopman beleg hoy panchayatot no ki beleg hoy panchayatot boyok to komai dia hoise 25 or 21 কৰি দিয়া হৈছে আৰু এটুৱে নবুজাই জানো কি we want younger crowd in our grass level democracy है ना younger crowd এটা বিচাৰিছে 21 বছৰ বয়সতে ৰিপ্ৰেজেন্ট কৰিব পৰা হৈছে definitely okay so এই বস্তুটো যে বয়সটো কম হয় তো এটু বুজাই ন কি these people can become future aspirants to become representatives at this level है ना grassroots level or start কৰিম হিয়তি প্ৰথমতে state level elections at nom representative হ'ব পাৰিব okay then maybe pan India level they can fight है ना तो this is a general justification ki boyak to kyo kam hoy okay fine now let's move to some we have very lucid way we have talked about 1950s Act, isn't it? And we have talked about 1951 Act. Fine. Okay, now let us very quickly talk about some important sections that we have not talked about in these two legislations, but which have a very dominant possibility that it might come in your exams, be it in prelims exam or be it in mains also. Okay. So here we have written that apart from Article 326 of the Constitution that guarantees the right to vote to every citizen above the age of 81, है ना, unless disqualified by law. Okay, hey article to Article 326 to है कि कोई से that guarantees right to vote. Okay, and right to vote is a constitutional right. है ना, this was a question in our prelims of UPSC in I think 2018 or 19. Constitutional right bully answer disile UPSC. Okay, and it was in Article 326. So right to vote to Article 326 hoy. ठीक है, ए right to vote Article 326 to है Representation of People's Act 1951 or kuntu section of power diye section 62 of Representation of People's Act 1951. Okay, it ensures that every person who is in the electoral roll of that constituency is entitled to vote. Okay, and I have also written ke to constitutional right hai na. Fine, so that means 326 number article to which is right to vote kuntu section of power kore section 62 or section 62 of 1950 or 1951 Act, definitely 1951 है ना. Fine, so ये दोनों मतलब साथ में चलते हैं. ठीक है, चलो constitutional right है. Okay, so next section that we need to talk about in Representation of People's Act 1951 is section 126. Okay, very quickly we'll cover this part. Okay, so section 126 की कोई कि 48 hours before the polling ends or concludes, displaying of election matter by television or similar apparatus in a constituency is prohibited. So ki koise ki 48 hours agol polling hekhor 48 hours agol ঠিক আছে আমি কোনো ধৰণৰ ডিসপ্লে অফ এনি ইলেকশন ম্যাটাৰ মানে সাপোজ আপোনাৰ এক্সিট পোল টাইপ হৈ গল বা এটা কমিউনিটি সাৰ্ভে কৰিব চেষ্টা কৰিছে কোনবা প্ল্যাটফৰ্ম ওয়াৰ্কাৰ্স বা সাম সোশ্যাল মিডিয়া ওয়াৰ্কাৰ্স ওকে তো তেনেকুৱা একো বস্তু আমি টেলিভিশন বা সিমিলার অ্যাপারেটাসত আমি হেতু দেখাব নোৱাৰো আৰু এটুৱে কি বুজাইছে কি যদি আমি 48 আৱাৰ্ছৰ উছৰে পাজৰে হয়নে নহয় এনেকুৱা এটা বস্তু যদি এলাউ কৰি দিও তো কি হ'ব পাৰে আমাৰ যোনটো এটা আমি ভাবি থৈ দিও কি আমি এটা suppose this is a house isn't it so here are 4 people in the house okay we have together come to a conclusion that maybe we will vote this person है ना so if jodi enekwa ta bostu allow kori dia hoy thik ase to last moment there can be lot of manipulations है ना there can be lot of rigging in the elections to these 3 people together who were about to vote this okay before 48 hours of kibata dekhi gol and they got manipulated now they are going to vote this person hai na to a to bostu etu amar democratic junto mandate hoy hetu to mane heri kori dibo no that it is going to mane collide with the rudimentary basics of our democratic polity hai na to he bostudur karone ei bostudu allow kora hua nai kintu jodio etu allow kora hua nai yate eta loop hole ase thik ase loop hole to ki hoy mate likhi disu section 126 on ami ki koisu newspaper sorry television but similar apparatus on noare hoy na hoy thik ase but it is not applicable to which things it is not applicable to print media okay news portals and social media isn't it a very big lacuna here है ना print media te jodi bostutut heri nai jodi mane bondho korwa nai titia hole baki nu ki thakile henekwa hoy jay na bostutu everybody almost reads the magazines newspapers or something like that every on our daily life है ना so ei bilak bostur pro to manipulate hobo pare kintu ei bostutu to include kora nai so etu data loophole roi gol hoy na so there have been lot of efforts in this direction ki a social media platforms bilak ba print media bilako jate prohibit koriba pare hetur proti kam choli ase bortoman lot of NGOs and self help groups have also come up with this discussion and this has been a part of dominant discussion in our political scenario in present times fine okay so next section to ki hoy section 126A prohibits the conduct of exit poll and dissemination of its result fine ঠিক আছে তো 126 তো আমি কি হয় চালো 48 আৱাৰ্ছৰ কাহিনীটো শুনিলো है ना আৰু 126A 126A টোৱে কি বেলেগ কয় কি এটোৱে বিশেষকৈ এক্সিট পোলৰ কথাই ডিসকাস কৰে কি এক্সিট পোল নিচিনা বস্তু আমি কৰিব নোৱাৰো হয়নে এই দিস ইজ আ है ना yeah तो exit poll निस्ना बस्तु एटा करिबो नवारो during the period mentioned है ना this period that we have mentioned of 48 hours we cannot do a exit poll because this will again lead to manipulation of votes है ना at the last moment which will eventually lead to again maybe a different party will get elected and people will not be able to express their opinion on a free and fair method है ना fine okay fine so we have learned about the we have very quickly learned about the qualifications firstly and now let us learn about some disqualifications ঠিক আছে কি MLA বা MP বিলাকৰ disqualification কিহৰ বেসিছত হ'ব পাৰে on the basis of representation of people's act 1951 okay so there are certain rules with regard to disqualification MPs in this conduct okay so let us very quickly go through it so section 8 and subunit 3 of the act states that if a MP or a MLA Lok Sabha and state legislative assembly है ना is convicted for any other crime and is sent to jail for 2 years okay or more he or she will be disqualified for 6 years from the time of release okay to yate koise ki MP ba MLA bilang jodi enekwa ji kunu crime kore juntur karone teok 2 বছৰ বা তাতকৈ অধিক সময়ৰ বাবে জেলত পঠিওৱা হয় তো তেও কি হ'ব তেও 6 বছৰৰ কাৰণে ডিসকুৱালিফাই হৈ যাব তো যদি I have to give rough idea তো suppose এজন মানুহ 3 বছৰৰ কাৰণে কনভিক্ট হৈ গৈছে he has a jail term of 3 years है ना আৰু কি কৈছে ইয়াতে disqualification of 6 years from the time of release okay তো 3 বছৰ তেও জেল খাটিলে তাৰ পিছত আৰু 6 বছৰৰ কাৰণে তেও disqualify হ'ব তো total তেও কিমান বছৰৰ কাৰণে হ'ব 9 years है ना तो he will lose a political life or political tenure of 9 years তো এইটোৱে কি ভাল কৰিছে কি criminalization of politics বুলি আমি যোনটো বস্তু পঢ়ি আছিলো juntud ma koisilo ki 40% of people in Lok Sabha has heinous criminal charges to ei bostu to root koribor karone help koribo hoy na noy jodi 6 bochor karone disqualify kori de he will have a cooling off period na ki teo jodi aru mane bhabibo bisarise teo bhul to ki hol ba agoloi nokoribor karone ei time to apt boli bhaba hoise aru hei karone 6 bochor time to rakha hoise fine So here next ki goes even if a person is on bail after the conviction and his appeal is pending for disposal he is disqualified for contesting and election fine so here kwa hoise ki a time dot ঠিক আছে এই যে 3 years or time dot convict হৈ গল এজন এক্স মানুহ 3 বছৰৰ কাৰণে convict হৈ গল কিন্তু তেওটো এটো কৰিব পাৰে কি এখন বেল এপ্লাই কৰিলে বেলটো ফলো আপ হৈ গল আৰু তেও meanwhile election খেলি দিলে হয়নে তো ইয়াতে কি কোৱা হৈছে যদিও হে মানুহজনে বেলত উলাই আহিছে ঠিক আছে convict হোৱাৰ পিছত after the conviction and his appeal is pending for disposal ঠিক আছে he is disqualified যদিও তেও বেলত উলাই আহিছে তথাপিও তেও disqualify হৈ থাকিব আৰু এটো জানো এটা ভাল কথা নহয় this is a step towards মানে criminalization of politics to null and void কৰিবৰ কাৰণে হে না এনেকুৱা যি কোনো মানুহ যোন 2 বছৰতকৈ বেছি টাইমৰ কাৰণে বা 2 বছৰৰ কাৰণে কনভিক্ট হৈ গৈছে বা হিহতি বেলটো যদি উলাই আহিছে তিতিয়াও ইলেকশন খেলিব নোৱাৰে ফাইন ওকে আৰু এখিনি কোনটো সেকশনত মেনশন কৰা আছে section 8 sub unit 3 fine তো section now we'll talk about the section 8 subunit 4 which allowed convicted MPs and MLAs and MLCs to continue in their post provided they appealed against their conviction sentence in higher courts within 3 months okay so yeah তো আমি যে एग्जांपल লৈ আছিল এই x নাম্বাৰ মানুহজন 3 বছৰৰ কাৰণে কনভিক্ট হৈ গৈছিল ঠিক আছে তো তেও বেল ললে ইলেকশন খেলিব নোৱাৰে আমি তো এটো গম পালো হয়নে আৰু এটো কোনটো পাৰ্টত গম পালো 8 সাব ইউনিট 3 হেনা কিন্তু 8 সাব ইউনিট 4 ত কি কৈছে তেও কিন্তু যদি এপিল এটা কৰে হায়াৰ কোৰ্টত সাপোজ হাই কোৰ্টত তেওঁৰ এই কেছটো তেও কনভিক্ট হৈ গৈছে তেও যদি এটা সুপ্ৰিম কোৰ্টত গৈ এপিল কৰে ঠিক আছে 3 মাহৰ ভিতৰত then to he will be able to play this case okay so এটো এটা লুপ হোল আছিল হয়নে নহয় কি এটোৱে যদি ৰাস্তা ইউজ কৰিব পাৰে তো এটোটো সবেই ইউজ কৰিব হয়নে নহয় 3 মাহৰ ভিতৰত সবেই এপিল কৰি দিব হয়নে নহয় কিন্তু এই যোনটো সেকশন হয় হেতু আমাৰ জুডিশিয়াৰি বুজি পালে যে এই সেকশনটোৰ কাৰণে ক্ৰিমিনালাইজেশন অফ পলিটিক্স তো আৰু প্ৰমোট হৈ আছে সো what did the Supreme Court of India do? Supreme Court of India in 2013 struck down this section of Representation of Peoples Act 1951 है ना and declared it as ultra vires and held that the disqualification takes place from the date of conviction fine to আমি যে আগতে বেল জুনে পাই হিহতি ইলেকশন খেলিব নোৱাৰে তো এই যে 8 সাবসেকশন 4 জুনটোত এপিল কৰে হাই সাপোজ হাই কোৰ্টত কনভিক্ট হৈ গলে সুপ্ৰিম কোৰ্টত যে এপিল কৰি 3 মাহৰ ভিতৰত কে ইলেকশন খেলিব পাৰে সেই বস্তুটো নাল এণ্ড ভয়েড কৰি দিলে তো এই লুপ হোল যোনটো আছিলে হেতু সুপ্ৰিম কোৰ্টে ৰিয়েলাইজ কৰিলে 2013 ত কি এইটোটো লুপ হোল হৈ আছে সো এই বস্তুটো নাল এণ্ড ভয়েড কৰি ওভাৰঅল ক্ৰিমিনালাইজেশন অফ পলিটিক্স তো prohibit koribo this is a very good step in that direction hai na fine okay we have quickly looked ki disqualification of procedure to Representation of Peoples Act 1951 ot ki asle now we will very quickly look ki constitutional ki provision ase jo disqualification to mandate hoy okay disqualification of our representatives okay mane we are talking about the Lok Sabha representatives and we are also talking about the state level election representatives fine so first point to key the provision for disqualification is given in article 102 of the constitution okay these articles that I'm mentioning if you can remember these articles in a very lucid way no you can manage to get some brownie points okay because if your competitors are not writing these articles it will be very nice to see this article on your paper particularly hai na so article 102 of the constitution so 102 of the constitution we have talked about and ki bujhay article the it specifies that a person shall be disqualified for contesting elections being a member of parliament under certain conditions okay 102 pe kisuman disqualify hoi jai boli koy aru ki provisions ase hetu ki provisions ase let us quickly go through office of profit jodi hold kore under the union or the state ঠিক আছে তিতিয়া disqualify hobo teo ঠিক আছে except the office has been exempted by the parliament okay very quickly I will make you understand this ki ejon manhu jodi apunar representative hoy ঠিক আছে তো he is get a remuneration for it na any some amount of money he is drawing against it elected representatives and Lok Sabha or state legislative assemblies also get a salary for doing that job isn't it fine so if this person is again engaged in a different suppose government or a secretary level post then he is drawing a remuneration from that also na to ei manhu jone now you will have to give double time to both the opportunities that he have so their time spent that he takes for the cause of the people or karne representation of the people or teo to attention to kom hoi jabo no karon ki teo to nijor onno juntu sakori ase hetu to besi time dibo lagibo to hetu jate nohok aru ei je cause to ase ki representative ejonor মানুহক ৰিপ্ৰেজেন্ট কৰাটো এটা নোবেল কজ নিচিনা হয় তো হেতু যাতে ডাইলিউট নহক সেই কাৰণে এই অফিস অফ প্ৰফিট ক্ৰাইটেৰিয়াটো এড কৰা হৈছে আৰু কোনটো আৰ্টিকলত এড কৰা হৈছে 102 তো এনেকুৱা যদি এটা কাম কৰি থাকে কি ইয়াৰ পৰা ৰিমিনাৰেশন হৈছে ইয়াৰ পৰা হৈ আছে তেতিয়া হলে সেই বস্তুটো তেও ডিসকোয়ালিফাই হবৰ কাৰণে এলিজিবল হৈ যায় যদি হে তেওঁৰ এই অফিসটো পাৰ্লিয়ামেন্টে স্পেশালি কৈ দিয়ে কি এটু চাকৰিত কিন্তু ডিসকোয়ালিফাই নহব তেতিয়া হে তেওঁ ডিসকোয়ালিফাই নহব নহলে তেওঁ ডিসকোয়ালিফাই হবৰ কাৰণে এলিজিবল হৈ যায় ফাইন ওকে Now let's move to the next point. If he is of unsound mind and stands so declared by a court, fine. Mane if he has been declared so that teo eneko eku decision making koribo nware because of some neurological disorder he has or he is not able to take any decisions because of some because of the unsoundness of his present state of mind okay then also he may be disqualified fine and the third point is he's an undischarged insolvent so basically undischarged insolvent is a person who has a lot of debt on himself and he has not been discharged of that debt okay basically that person generally is a bankrupt person who is not able to pay back his loans okay and he has not been discharged of the duty to pay back his loans okay so that kind of a person will also be disqualified fine if he is not a citizen of India or has voluntarily acquired the citizenship of a foreign state okay or under any acknowledge the allegiance of a foreign state. Fine. So etu bujaise ki ejon suppose amar representative hoy, teo citizen of ejon suppose amar representative hoy, initially teo citizen of India asile, thik ase, kintu teo representative hoi thakute suddenly kintu teo ekhon beleg ekhon country, suppose teo goile bla Kenya citizenship loi lole, thik ase. Fine. To kintu teor kintu Indian citizenship to tita cancel hoi jabo, to jitia teo Indian citizenship to cancel hoi jabo, to teo representative hoar parao he can be disqualified, mane usually he is disqualified if that scenario comes up. Okay, and this is the second case scenario hai na, ki teo voluntarily acquired the citizenship of a different country, kintu teo jodi citizen of India e nohoy, teo no representative keneke hobo hai na. To hetu to that is not even a case only. If he is not a citizen of India, he cannot fight for elections also hai na. Fine. So ami constitution ki disqualification provisions asile we quickly went through hai na. So we have completed the 1950s Act and the 1951 Act hai na. So we have completed these two acts in very lucid manner. Ami protek tore sarita point ami discuss korilo aru hei sarita point to I have discussed in one slides. Okay, so we have completed the first part of our discussion today. That was the Representation of People's Act. So now we will have to read a little bit about the democratic polity and its concessions that is happening in our contemporary times. Fine. So let's begin with it.